The FHFA director, Bill Pulte, lobbing yet another mortgage fraud accusation at Cook overnight, just ahead of today's court hearing on her attempt to block her termination. And that's just where we start today. Eamon Javers is in Washington with the latest. Eamon, get us up to date.
Yeah, Courtney, that court hearing is now over, and it was non-determinative. That is, the judge did not decide whether or not to issue a preliminary injunction to block the president's attempt to fire Lisa Cook from the Fed. The judge here says she wants to see more documents. She's going to resume everything on Tuesday. So we go into the Labor Day weekend really with a question mark over the Fed and over this position at the Fed, whether or not Cook will be able to keep her job or not. The second half of this hearing was fascinating because this was the part of the hearing where the Department of Justice, Yakov Roth, the attorney arguing for the president, made its case that the president does have full authority to fire Lisa Cook from the Fed and doesn't need to really abide by much in the way of due process, that a public notice via tweet is enough in terms of due process to Lisa Cook. And then got into this the definitional question of what is for cause anyway. It's not defined in the statute, so it's going to be up to the judge here to decide. And what Roth said, speaking for the president, is that for cause is more than just a policy disagreement, and it has to bear on the officials' ability to do their job. And then Roth also added, you could argue that the cause needed to be known, not known at the time of the Senate confirmation hearing. That is, that the president can't go back to something that came up during Senate confirmation and say, actually, you know, the Senate didn't consider that enough, and therefore I'm firing this person. So that opened up an opening for Abby Lowell, the attorney for Lisa Cook, to say, well, wait a second. If you're saying that it had to be unknown at the time of the Senate confirmation hearing, we'll go back and we'll pull all the documents that Lisa Cook sent up to the Senate, which definitely include her mortgage and all of the information around her banking. And we will show that this was a known issue at the time, or at least knowable by the Senate, which had access to all these same documents and didn't make a big stink about it at the time. So that was an interesting back and forth, but ultimately inconclusive here today, Courtney, in terms of whether or not the court's going to step in and block the president from firing Lisa Cook.
I know you're not an attorney, Eamon. I guess you're trying to play one on TV for us, at least to explain some of these proceedings. So forgive me if these questions aren't fair to your personal expertise, but you've been following this so closely. If anyone knows, it's probably you. So I guess just for a point of reference, this hearing today was just about whether or not this firing can happen, not about whether the allegations are actually true or not. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, that's another question that the judge is going to have to adjudicate here, right? This was just the very first hearing in this lawsuit. So this was just the most preliminary proceeding, but it did really get into a very philosophical debate on what does it mean to have cause to fire someone and what is the president's authority, as you look at Abby Lowell there, the attorney for Lisa Cook. And so they didn't really get into the underlying allegation. What Abby Lowell said in the hearing is that Lisa Cook hasn't had a chance to defend herself at all. You know, we haven't even asked whether or not an accountant filled out these forms that are at issue or a lawyer filled out these forms, whether Lisa Cook even knew that these things were being asserted on her behalf or not. What the government said is they say, look, Lisa Cook has not defended herself at all. She hasn't said anything in public about this. She hasn't defended herself. She hasn't provided an explanation. Therefore, if she could have, she certainly would have by now. Therefore, she doesn't really have anything useful to say. We can move forward with this firing.
Wow. A lot of moving parts. Eamon, thank you so much for being here with us and following all those details. It's really valuable.